Oh, hello, fellow adolescents. My name is Selin. Welcome to my channel. And today we're going to be talking about cults because I want to, and you do as I say, and I say subscribe. Okay, let's start. So today we're going to be talking about Jim Jones, Jonestown, and the Jonestown Massacre. So to be completely clear, I'm going to be focusing on Jim Jones's life only in this video, just because there are so many people brought up throughout his life and it's just so confusing if I were to mention them all. So I will be mentioning them, but just minimally, so I avoid any confusion. In the next part of the series, we're going to take a look on how Jim Jones was able to control the minds of so many people to the point where they were able to take their own life just because they were told to. So look forward to that. Just know that's coming soon. Oh, hello there. This is Selin, but slightly to the right. This is the part where I beg you to subscribe and you comply because I'm so persuasive and my words have moved your soul to the subscribe button. If I haven't moved your soul, then you should move your lazy finger and press the subscribe button. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. Okay, so as I tell you the story, I'm gonna be painting my nails red. I'm gonna do a coat of this shimmery stuff and then a top coat of clear coat. Okay, let's get into it and start with who Jim Jones was. Just a little summary so you know what I'm talking about throughout the video. Jim Jones's full name is Jim Warren Jones. He was born on May 13th, 1931, and he was an American cult leader. He promised his followers a utopia or paradise type of place in the jungles of South Africa. He proclaimed himself as the Messiah of the People's Temple, which was practically a religion he just made up. I don't know a better way to explain it. He eventually led his followers of 900 people into mass suicide, or in my opinion, it's a mass murder. This mass murder or mass suicide is known to be as the Jonestown Massacre. The Jonestown Massacre occurred on November 18th, 1978, so not too long ago. And that's pretty much the basic information you need to know about Jim Jones. Now let's get into his early life. He was born in a rural area of Crete, Indiana. His mother is Lintheta Putnam, I hope I'm saying that right, and his father is a World War I veteran, and his name was James Thurman Jones. I really hope I'm saying their names right. As a young kid, Jim loved to read. He studied people like Joseph Stalin, Gandhi, and Adolf Hitler. Children's books, right? All about Adolf Hitler in World War II. Through reading about so many people, he developed an intense interest in religion. Some say that it's because he had a hard time making friends, so he found that comfort in religion and in books. But I think he had a hard time making friends because he studied about Adolf Hitler. You know, like I feel like it was its own cycle, you know? You know, at this point you just think, oh, he's just like a nerdy kid who likes to read, you know? I see no harm in any of what he's doing. And you know what? That's what I thought too. Until I heard what some of his childhood acquaintances said about him. A lot of people recall him as a really weird kid. And they say that not just because he was so into religion, but because he was so infatuated with death to the point where he held funerals for animals that he had killed. I mean, I was definitely a nerdy kid. I still am a nerd. In fact, I'm probably the most nerdy person out there. But I can say with full confidence that I have never held a funeral for small animals that I have killed myself. There were rumors about him stabbing specifically cats and then burying them and then holding funerals for them, which I find very bizarre. I don't even know how to explain that. Mind you, these funerals would be held on his parents' property. It's not like he would just go to a park and like, you know, do what he needs there, but he would literally do it in his front yard. I mean, so he was a regular churchgoer and he was often out of his house, like outside of his house, because his parents were really absent. His parents were either always out of the house or abusing some sort of substance like alcohol, and so he was just kind of left on his own to go and find his own nutrients and shelter. I mean, he had a house, but he just didn't have a home, and that kind of led him into very horrible paths throughout his life. Like, at one point, he stayed with the Kennedys, which I don't even know how that happens. I'm getting a little too ahead of myself. I need to like calm down. But his childhood was a little messed up. So I see an explanation for what he did later on in his life, but it's definitely not an excuse for what he did later on in his life, if that makes any sense. As I said, Jim was a regular churchgoer, and he slowly developed like an even greater interest for religion. And later on in his life, he even entered the ministry after graduating from university. By the way, at some point in his early life, his parents separated, and then he relocated with his mom to Richmond, Indiana. Okay, let's get into his adult life and the second coat of this nail polish. So in December of 1948, Jones graduated early with honors from Richmond High School. To support himself, Jim worked at Richmond Reed Hospital, and he was pretty well regarded by hospital senior staff. So, you know, his life seemed to be going in a good direction. At Richmond Reed Hospital, he met a nurse named Selin Baldwin, which he ended up marrying, but she ended up dying with him at the Jonestown Massacre. Classic love story, you know? You marry a guy from a hospital, and then you just end up dying with him from a cult he created. I mean, sounds like Prince Charming to me. I mean, get it, I guess, okay. Jones and Baldwin moved to Bloomington, Indiana, and he attended Indiana University, Bloomington. They relocated again in 1951 to Indianapolis. Okay, let's get into his religious beginnings. So between the 1950s and 1960s in Indianapolis, Indiana, Jim Jones gained a reputation as a charismatic churchman who claimed to have psychic powers. Like, every time there's an up, there's just like a bungee jump down and then we get back up, you know? So you're probably thinking, Selin, how did he convince all of those people that he had psychic powers? Well, he was a master manipulator. He pretended to be able to tell the future and miraculously heal those who are sick. He proved so many of these fake healings through getting one of his like trusted followers to dress up in costume, and then he would call them from the stage where he would preach his beliefs, and he would go, "Hey you, you're blind, now you can see," or "Hey you can't walk, now you can." And so the person who was pretending not to be able to walk would get up from their wheelchair and would start like dancing and pretending that they were just cured.
You've told me nothing about your condition.
No, I haven't.
Give that little sweetheart a little bit of love. Thank you, baby. Peace. Now, take your glasses off. Just stare in our face. We've seen Sister Brown here, who was blind, totally healed. We saw one of our sisters blind from her childhood. It could be hysterical blindness, whatever. We're not concerned. She was blind and could not see. Now, look at my face. I'm going to hold up some fingers. You concentrate hard. I love you. The people love you. And most importantly, Christ loves you. What do you see? How many fingers?
3.
Reach your hands out. Reach your hand out to me. Reach the fingers out that are bothering you. Now, is the pain gone? You have a bad spinal condition?
Yes.
And your hip is injured.
Yes.
Step from your wheelchair. Begin to step from your wheelchair. Take that step. Bless your heart. Take that step. Take that step. Move forward. Walk briskly. Walk.
You Jesus now? You God? Alright. You only do good, right? Okay. Alright, okay. Okay, Jim. Okay, take a seat. Now, what really got him so many followers is how loud of an advocate he was for racial integration, which was a huge problem at the time. He advocated this in many ways. For example, he used to set up sting operations to catch restaurants refusing to serve black customers. Of course, this developed some conflict with the church elders, but in general, people loved him because he created this community where everyone could be together, everyone felt included, everyone was happy, everyone was always singing, everyone was just believing in him. He used to say, like, I will be whatever you want me to be. Like, if you see me as your God, I will be your God. If you see me as your friend, I will be your friend. And I don't know the exact quote, but he said something on the lines of that. And people loved him for it. And a lot of people saw him as their God. And they just generally saw him as the superior in whichever situation you would put him in. By 1955, Jim developed a Pentecostal church named the Wings of Deliverance, which later on was named the People's Temple. By the way, the only reason why he eventually named it the People's Temple is not because he cared about the people, but because the place he rented or bought, or I'm not completely sure, was a temple. And so the name temple was still on the building. So he decided to just roll with it and not pay much extra and just call it the People's Temple. I mean, he was kind of smart. You have to admit, he was kind of smart. But keep in mind that he had no affiliation with any denomination and had zero theological training. Like, he was in no position to be leading a religious group. All right, let's get to the People's Temple. By 1960, Jim's congregation was known to be racially integrated. And as I said, it was particularly progressive at the time. Especially with Jim being white, he had so much privilege and such an advantage to make this a good thing for everybody. During this time, he was noticed for many good deeds, some of which was work with the homeless. In fact, in the early 1960s, he was the director of the Indianapolis's Human Rights Commission. That is such a long name, by the way. And at this point, Jim's congregation that was previously named Wings of Deliverance was now called People's Temple. And in the 1960s, People's Temple was affiliated with the Disciples of Christ. And 4 years later, Jones was ordained in that church. Jim had always been using substance throughout his life, and as his congregation developed and grew, so did his substance use. This caused him to be paranoid, and at the beginning, it wasn't so bad. But again, as time went on and as he used more substances, so did his paranoia. And so in 1965, he started to get paranoid of nuclear war. And as a result, Jim and his wife moved to Northern California. First, they went near Ukiah, I don't know if I'm saying that right, and then to San Francisco in 1971. After the move to Northern California, Jim adopted the name The Prophet, and he became obsessed with power. Like, at this point, it was dangerous. In 1972, he opened another temple in Los Angeles. So now there was 2 temples, one in San Francisco and one in Los Angeles. He began to make friends with politicians and the press in California, and slowly became a well-respected churchman. And because he developed such a high profile and also advocated for racial integration, a large percentage of his followers were African American. The People's Temple was very active in its humanitarian causes in its communities. But because of Jones's obsession with power, his treatment of his followers was far less than humane. Although his followers seemed so happy and were always so ready to go from San Francisco to Los Angeles in these buses and travel, and everyone was invited, and it seemed so great, many were coerced and brainwashed to sign over their possessions, all of them, including passports, including money, including homes, entire houses, all to the church. Jim banned romantic relationships among temple members, but he himself engaged in romantic relationships with both males and females outside of his marriage, which his wife was not okay with. Oh, but it gets worse. So since racially integrated groups were so uncommon, members of the temple who were people of color or members of other minority groups were convinced, or should I say manipulated, into thinking that if they left the People's Temple, they would be rounded up into government-run concentration camps. Like, what do you... Like, I'm so fed up. Oh, and did I forget to mention how people were encouraged to snitch or inform on each other to Jones when they did something against the policy of the People's Temple? I'm going to beat Jones, I swear to God, if I could just... He took advantage of people's vulnerability, and that's what cults do. I'm not gonna get too in depth of how he got so many people to follow him under these horrible circumstances, because I'll be talking all about that in the next video. But I do want to say that he took advantage of people so greatly. And the worst part is that he had so much power to create something so great with what he already developed, which was already huge. It was nationwide. Everyone was talking about the People's Temple this, People's Temple that, and how great it was all. It was on the news. Politicians were talking about how great the People's Temple was. But he took advantage of these people. He took all that they had, and there was even rumors about him using the money and the possessions of these people that they signed off to the church for his own use. It infuriates me. Anyways, before I rage even more, let's move on to Jonestown.
Yes, I'm very happy here.
You know that your father and your brother are convinced that you're not.
Well, I'm very happy here. I don't know what else I can do to convince them. I've talked to my brother several hours now.
Can be done to solve this thing where a brother and sister...
There's absolutely no problem between my brother and myself. He's happy, you know, I'm very happy for him to come down here anytime. He's asking me to come back to the United States to spend a week to convince him and my family that I'm not being held here against my will, and I don't plan to return at this time to convince anybody because I know I'm happy here and I know my mind. And, you know, I'm not saying I'm never coming back to the United States, but this is my home here, this is my life for now, and this is where I plan to remain.
In 1977, Jim began to face allegations and questions from the press. And one of the most notable allegations is that he was abusing his followers and taking their possessions to use for his own. Like the things they signed off, like their money, their houses, whatever, as I said before. The only issue I see here is how Jones and his community that he created wasn't looked into too much. It was just questioned. It was just rumors. It was just allegations. It was always excused. All of these rumors were always excused and dismissed because what he created was so big and so powerful. Remember, he was friends with politicians. He was friends with the press. He knew his way around bad press, and he knew how to get good press. Amongst the allegations and the questions and all that from the press, Jones took his paranoid butt along with all of the People's Temple to Guyana. And there he set up an agricultural commune which he called Jonestown. Mind you, he had been building Jonestown for about 3 to 4 years prior to the allegations. So we don't really know if he moved because of the allegations or because he was always paranoid, because he always said something about a civil war in America. He was always paranoid about something. So as the superior of the cult, he proceeded to confiscate all passports, as well as millions and millions of dollars. He also manipulated his cult members with threats of beatings, blackmail, and probable death. Like, he was like, you know what, you're gonna do as I say, you're gonna go with me to Guyana, or you're gonna die. He manipulated his followers so much. I will get into the details of how he manipulated his followers, but just as a brief summary, he got control of their minds through making them absolutely exhausted. So he would make them do manual labor from sunrise till sunset, and even after then they would preach and dance and party until they were so tired and get very minimal amounts of sleep. They were also not allowed to see their family or their friends, so they weren't allowed to talk about their thoughts. They were also getting minimal nutrition, like they were almost starved. All of them. Since they signed off all of their money, their passports, their homes, and all of that to the church through manipulation, they had nothing else. They were stuck in this cycle. He also staged bizarre rehearsals for mass suicide. For example, he would tell people, lie down on the ground and act dead. And they would all act dead for like 30 minutes straight. And he would just walk around and watch to see their loyalty. There was even once where he made them drink Kool-Aid. And he was like, it has poison in it. All of you drink it. And guess what? They all drank it. It was all to test their loyalty, and it was all manipulation, and it all worked. November 14th, 1978, 4 days before the massacre. Leo Ryan, which is a US congressman, arrived in Guyana with a group of reporters and relatives of the cultists to conduct an unofficial investigation. Why, you may ask? Well, alleged abuse, which was totally happening. There were many rumors at the time of members being held against their will. There were also some rumors that some were subjected to physical and psychological abuse, which was totally happening. As I clean around my fingernails with this cotton tip, Q-tip, we're gonna talk about the Jonestown Massacre. So 4 days after the Congressman Leo arrived to Guyana, he was set to return back to the United States. But before he left, he was approached by several temple members who were desperately wanting to leave, and so he took them with him in his truck. Other members of the temple attacked Ryan before the truck left, but fortunately Leo escaped unhurt and they continued to the airstrip. Then the temple members launched an attack at the airstrip, and in case you didn't already catch on, Jones was the one who ordered that they would be killed. Jones launched that attack because he was scared that the people who escaped were gonna call authorities and that Jonestown would be no more and he would be arrested. As a result of the attack that Jim initiated, 5 people, including Leo Ryan and 3 members of the press, were shot and killed, and the 11 others were wounded. You'd think he'd stop there, but he didn't. He activated his suicide plan. This is our world, kids. This is it. Take it or leave it. In the wake of the shooting, Jim released radio orders for the people outside of the temple, and he told them to commit suicide. Shortly after, he told the people outside the compound to take their lives. He told the people inside the compound to follow as he did and take their own lives as well. This plan included a Kool-Aid drink that was laced with cyanide, sedatives, and tranquilizers. It was first squirted into the mouths of babies and then small children via syringe, and then the adults drank the Kool-Aid. Which is, by the way, where that saying comes from, don't drink the Kool-Aid. Even though the majority of them just obeyed without questions, a lot of them were still forced to drink the Kool-Aid. And countless others were just shot dead by Jones's loyal men. Like, it's genuinely mind-boggling. Like, it's almost angering. Actually, no, it's infuriating. Jim himself died of a gunshot wound, which is possibly self-inflicted.
It couldn't be worse than this. Come on, Don. That's what it looks like. That's a gap.
Guyanese troops reached Jonestown the next day. The death toll of cultists eventually placed at 913, which included 304 people who were under the age of 18. Some death tolls included the 5 people that were killed at the airstrip, which brings the total up to 918. But either way it's counted, with or without the people who died at the airstrip, it still makes this incident one of the largest mass deaths US in America. It did not need to happen, and that's what angers me the most. Fewer than 100 people of the temple members in Guyana survived, and the majority of those people had either defected that day or had been in Georgetown. Officials later discovered a cache of firearms, hundreds of passports stacked together, and $500,000 in US currency. The People's Temple effectively disbanded after the incidents and declared bankruptcy at the end of 1978. Only one man named Larry Layton was tried in the United States for his involvement in the incident. He was a temple member and he was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, aiding to commit murder, and abetting in the murder of Leo Ryan. He was also found guilty of attempted murder of U.S. Embassy official Richard Dwyer, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Even though he was sentenced to life in prison, he was released in 2002. And that, my friends, is the story of Jim Jones, Jonestown, and the Jonestown Massacre. Okay, before we get to my final thoughts, let's look at my nails. Okay, they look worse than they actually are. Like on camera, they look worse than they actually are in person. Let's be honest here, nobody actually takes the time to take off the sides with acetone. Like, I'd rather just take a few showers, wash my hands 3 or 4 times, and it'll be gone. Why waste your time? I tried this on 2 nails and it was just a waste of time. So forget that. Forget you! Forget you! That's a Trisha Paytas reference. You're welcome. I personally think it was crazy how Jim was able to control the minds of so many people to the point where they were just able to wake up one day, able to take their own lives and the lives of their friends and families in horrendous ways just because they were told to do so. It's absolutely mind-boggling. I think that's what shocks me the most. And don't be afraid to leave me some advice on how to improve, because I know that these videos aren't perfect. They are my first few, so just let me know what I can improve on, and I will love to hear your feedback. In the next video of the series, we'll be taking a deeper look on Jim's manipulation, on how he was able to control the minds of over 900 people. So if you're interested in that, maybe subscribe, like the video, stay tuned for it. I can't wait to post it. I will be making different types of videos, but I think true crime is just really calling me right now. And yeah, I think that's it. Comment your thoughts down below, like the video, subscribe, turn on post I keep stuttering at every outro. You know what? That's it. That's all you get. Bye bye. Bye.